Yeah, so I want to make the most complicated planter. And what I mean by the most complicated is I'm going to make planters that are completely without any type of slope. This guy here, I wouldn't make this way because I can just use the sand fill method that I talk about. So this slope is massive. If I turn this over, I can get the planter out easily. This slope is very easy to deal with. Something like this, an old beaten up pail, is a completely different story. If I filled this up with cement, I would never be able to get it out. This is even worse. I would never get it out of something that is perfectly on a 90-degree angle. You just can't get them out. The cement won't come out. So what I do is I take a grinder. This is from an old drum kit that I found. So basically all I do is and you line them up with each other so you can tie it. Because I'm going to fill this up with cement. And by having these ties here, I can actually take it apart very easily. So if you see, that's how I have them lined up. String. As you can see, I'm pulling it together nice and tight. And this is the easiest thing to open up when you want to take it apart again. Super easy to take apart. As you can see, that's perfectly closed. Cylinder, the drum kit. I'm going to do the same thing with, everyone has this type of a pail lying around. I'm going to do the same thing with this to show you how to use this. Basically the same thing, you pick a straight line. Okay, this cuts a lot easier. The same thing again, cut in half. The separation is very clear. Off this grinding marks, these grinding marks here. So everyone has a pail, a dead pail like this lying around. You can reuse it. So same thing, I'm going to put screws here. And it's really important to get these two screws in here. That does a lot for the top. Funny how soft this plastic is once you cut the bottom off. Okay, there you go. They're all lined up, ready to be tied. So the same thing here. I'm going to tie this up. Don't have to get too complicated with it. Just line them up and they won't move. Very interesting how this really does keep them in place. Okay, really nicely lined up, ready for cement. So I'm going to explain what I'm going to do. Is I'm going to fill up these 2 containers with, so 1 cement and 10 sand. So what happens is once I fill this up, it's very easy for the center to be chiseled out once I make a planter around it. I'll show you how that works. So I'm going to make the cement mix for this right now. And you have to mix this really well because you want the one shovel full of cement to be everywhere in the mix. Okay, there it is. Everything in here is nice and gray. I'm going to start filling this guy up. Again, 10 to 1. Very, very weak mix. I'm going to clean this up. Water's coming out. Basically going to flatten this out. You don't have to go all the way up. It depends how big of a planter you want. You can go all the way up or you can stop here where I am stopping. And I have to let this dry for at a minimum 12 hours because there's very little cement in here. Then all I do, I'm going to show you, is I'm going to take this apart and then it's ready to go. Yeah, so for this pail mix, I made it a lot thicker. I just want to show you the difference when you use a thin mix or a wetter mix and a drier mix. The drier mix is going to be a lot more porous. For the second phase, it makes a difference. You open the seam up, you have enough energy to still move it, not a problem. And I'll have to wait till tomorrow to show you the second part of this video. What I always do is I check the roundness, make sure it's nice and round. Make sure this joint is perfect. That the top is nice and level. And tomorrow's another day, done. Create a round edge here because it helps the second process that we're going to do tomorrow, having that round edge. I like to do it even on the super dry mix. What it does is it makes the planter that we're going to make stronger because it'll have more cement here. It'll have a round inside. Actually looks more attractive too. There we go. And tamp this down a bit. Okay, ready for tomorrow. So it's the next day. I'm going to open these corset planters up here. So basically I've cut the planter in half, the container in half. I'm going to undo it. I'll keep the screws in here so I can make a next one. Pops open easily. Okay, so here's my shape. And what this is 10 to 1. So if I hit this, it'll break up very easily. It has very little strength. So I'm going to make my planter on the outside of this with the skin and create the planter that way. I made a second one just out of a regular pail because everyone has a beaten up old pail lying around. So they can use that to make a planter anytime they want. I'm I'm going to leave the screws in place again so that I could use it again anytime I want to make another planter. And down here it's really important to have 2 screws on the reinforcement, because that's where it will open up. So basically, same thing. And if you remember correctly, this was a lot thicker mix. So I'm going to plaster this up in the next part of the video, and then we're going to dig this center part out. So this is just basically a skeleton for the planter to be built up onto. Okay, so if I were to make these planters, I would always prefer to do the sand fill method. Watch the video that I made about the sand fill method. It's the easiest way. This is a lot more complicated. So basically, what is really important is this angle here. You see that difference between here and there? That means that I can pull this planter out. I would make it like this, put the planter backwards when it's dry, and then pull it off. With this one, I absolutely don't have that option. I can't pull this out. The center part will not come out, even if it was made out of plastic. You can't get it out. If you see here, it's basically a 90-degree angle. You can't get this out of anything. It will not come out. Doesn't matter what you try. This one is a little bit better. It is almost, you know, maybe 78 degrees or something like that. So this one will not come out either. There's no way you're getting these out if this was a pail. So if I took the pail and put cement around here and use the pail as the frame, first of all, it's very slippery, and second of all, this will never come out. The only way I might get it out if I can fold this inwards and then pull it out down below. So this is when you do this 10-to-1 mix, and that's the only time you would do a planter like this, because it's a bit more work chiseling all this out. So that would be the only time you would use this method if you want planters that are very cylindrical, that don't have any slope going down towards the sides. So remember, if you're going to do something that has really good slopes, just use the sand fill method. It'll cost you and save you so much time when you do it that way, instead of this method here, because this is very intense to get this center core out. Okay, so I always like to do my little trick where I put white cement around the base of the planter. What that does is it shows up in the mix as a split in the concrete. It looks like somebody chiseled the concrete. It looks beautiful. So you go all the way around with this white cement. Okay, you get the idea. I'm going to finish this off, and then we'll show you what it looks like when it's finished. Okay, so this is absolutely no different than icing a cake. You'll see all the fibers here. We've put so many fibers in, we're going to burn them off with the torch. So when you're happy with the shape, this is a very stony mix, which makes it harder to apply. You could use a mix that has just pure sand, or a mortar mix to finish it off nicely. But what we're going to do is we're going to first put white cement on it. This will dry it out even faster. Okay, that's part one. We're doing this in full sun. This thing is drying so fast. So now what I do is I take the same sand that we mixed with and I go a bit harder. Okay, the only thing I really like to do is batter this edge here so it's nice and round and it doesn't cut anybody. And that's it. We're going to let this dry for tomorrow. And then you have to chisel out this inside, which comes out super, super easy because it's only 10-to-1. This is 3-to-1. And to get the thickness right, you're basically applying it equally around, and then you'll usually end up really close to being 1 inch all the way around. That's what we're at. And then in 1 hour, I'm going to moisten this down. And then by tomorrow afternoon, we can take it out.